Welcome to another edition of the In Search SEO podcast, where we paint the town red with search marketing insights. This week we welcome Investing.com's own Igal Stolpner, who joins us to shed light on search competition analysis, how to know which competitors you should or should not focus on, how to gauge a competitor's threat level qualitatively, and how to be both innovative and effective when creating an SEO strategy based on your competition analysis. Plus, we look at how the length of featured snippets has changed and what it might mean for your site's traffic. I am your host, Morty Oberstein, and I am joined by she, who hates anything old, including her grandparents, Sapir Carabello.
Why are you taking my words out of context, Morty? I said I hate old pop culture references, not that I hate anything old. By the way, shout out to my grandparents. I love you. You're awesome. But there's just no chance they're listening.
No offense to you, because every time I bring up an old, movie from the 80s, like early 90s, you're like, oh, this is terrible. I'm not listening. By the way, you did know and you did like Back to the Future. We were talking before the podcast. We mentioned Back to the Future.
Right.
So good on you that you at least knew what a flux capacitor was. But come on, every time I bring up an 80s thing, you're like, this is old, Morty.
Because it's old.
It's not old.
It is.
Forget it. I can't have this conversation anymore. You're depressing me. It's depressing. And you're killing my mojo here.
I'm sorry.
All right, it's okay. I kid. Do not forget, by the way, we put out a new episode of the In Search SEO podcast each and every Tuesday. You can find it on the Rank Ranger blog. You can find it on SoundCloud. You can find it on Stitcher. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on iTunes, where you can subscribe. And also, do not forget, when you want white label SEO reporting, you want Rank Ranger. Our marketing dashboards are 100% white label, as they give you full access to the HTML and CSS, so you can make your dashboards look and feel like any site you want. Plus, it will not cost you an arm or a leg. It's cheap. So head over to the Rank Ranger site to check them out. I should have been a used car salesman.
Yeah, right.
Just cheap. Head on down. Bob's Discount Auto.
Please stop.
I actually have like a used car salesman jacket that I bring out once in a while.
Really?
Yeah, it's awesome. I'll wear it to work next time. It's not like a million degrees.
Oh my God.
Okay. All right, we've got a great show for you. Igal Stolpner comes in and talks about SERP feature competition analysis. But before we get into that, and before we talk about all things search competition analysis, I took a look at the length of featured snippets for you, which means it's time to go data. In the not-too-distant past, I put out a study on the length of featured snippets as they are now relative to the past, and I haven't had a chance to talk about them here on the podcast, so now's my big chance to talk about it here on the In Search SEO podcast.
Nice.
Yep. So if you remember, I got to tie this in. Okay, a while back, a few months ago, I wrote an article for Search Engine Land all about why I thought featured snippets would be getting slimmer.
Why slimmer?
Because I went on a diet. That's a lame joke.
Yes,
oh, I'm sorry. Dear audience, I'm sorry. That's terrible.
You should be sorry.
Sapir, I'm also sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I think they're going to get slimmer in terms of the amount of content because Google's getting better understanding on what it's looking at. Okay. And of course, there's also some new indexation processes that allows Google to index short little snippets of content. I'm, of course, talking about Fraggles. If you want to learn more about Fraggles, we'll link to it in the post for this podcast, okay? Now, so in other words, Google wants to have shorter content. Well, we'll talk about why they want to have shorter content, but shorter content is because they're just getting better at targeting what should be in there and what should not be in there, so Google rambles on less in the feature snippets, unlike me, who's rambling on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so anyway, shortly after putting out that article on Search Engine Land, I started to notice that some of the content making its way into the feature snippet was getting in there really quickly. Right, so I would see, let's say, for example, I would see Search Engine Land do an article, and the next day there would be a feature snippet all about. I literally, never the next day, sometimes hours later, that article, if you did a query related to the article, you would get a featured snippet. I mean, so that was really super quick. And at the same time, I noticed that those particular types of feature snippets, they looked really short.
Why would Google put shorter content in? Okay,
so I suspect for two reasons. One, people like shorter content. It's just less to read. I'm busy and it's easier to read. Okay. But two, it lets the feature snippet act like a direct answer. So a feature snippet is content, by the way, it shows at the top of the SERP. It's content with a URL. In other words, you get an answer, but you also get a URL to where the content came from. A direct answer is Google's own content. So if you search for, I don't know, when's Danny DeVito's birthday? So Google will just give you a little box and tells you when Danny DeVito's birthday is, and there's no link. You can't go anywhere else. That's a direct answer. Okay. So having featured snippets that come off like a direct answer, or just give you the answer and then you're done, that lets Google come off more authoritative, like my voice right now. Um, which helps for a few reasons. Google wants to be more authoritative because A, it's just a good association for people to have. Like, we're authoritative. We're giving you answers. We want to be you want your search engine to be authoritative because you want people to come back to you and say, "Okay, Google knows what it's talking about."
Right.
It also helps for voice search to be very authoritative because on voice search you don't get any options. You just get the answer Google gives you. So building up that profile that Google is authoritative is really important for voice search. So that's just, I can go into this a lot more in depth than I will right now, but those are two of the reasons why I think Google wants to have shorter answers in the featured snippet. Now, by the way, if Google could, I would suspect they would have more direct answers. But the problem is that means that they have to assimilate that content into their own ecosystem, so to speak, or their own backend, and they just don't have it. There's a lot of the queries out there, sites have the content. Right? Google doesn't have that content. If you ask Google, when is, I don't know, what day of the week does Thanksgiving fall out? Thanksgiving falls on a Thursday every year. That's a dumb question. What is the date of Super Bowl, 156 in the year 2057? So Google will give you little boxes. Oh, that's going to be on February 16th.
Right.
Right? Okay, so Google has that information, but many queries, Google doesn't have the information, so it uses the information from your site. So what Google does is what it wants to do is sort of have the best of both worlds. It wants to have its cake and eat it too, or pie, because I think pie is better than cake.
Pie is so
okay,
good.
we talked about this before. We were talking about pie. I love pie.
I know.
Okay, so Google wants to have its pie and eat it too. So it wants to have a direct answer, a direct answer format where it's a quick answer, it's very authoritative, and it keeps users in the Google ecosystem, but it doesn't have the content, right? Sites have the content. So what does it do? It creates a featured snippet that it very much mirrors direct answers. So it uses your content to create a direct answer for all intents and purposes. And there are actually formats of featured snippets where it presents the content in the box with a header. And the header basically is a direct answer with some more content coming afterwards, but you don't even need to read that. There's basically a direct answer in there via the title, via the heading of the snippet. Okay, I'm running a little bit off topic here. So those are the reasons why I think Google wants to have slimmer, shorter, featured snippets. Okay? Now, once I saw that what I suspected to be shorter content within the featured snippets, I did what any normal person does.
Move on.
No, normal people don't move on. They get stuck in,
That's just you, Morty. That's just
mull it over, think about it, experiment with it. Don't let it out of your thoughts. You stay up in the middle of the night thinking, why are featured snippets looking shorter? So I did what any normal person did, and I took 150 old featured snippets, and I compared them to the current snippets that appear on the search engine's results page, known as the SERP.
Old?
Yes, okay. So featured snippets that appeared between 2016 and the end of Q3 in 2018.
Where did you get these?
Right. So that's a good question. That's like the one question everybody's asking me about the studies. Like, where did you find these old snippets? So one of the advantages of having no life.
Oh my god.
No, you know where I got that from? I went to the corner of East 4th and Avenue A. In Manhattan.
Right.
And I saw a guy with a trench coat. I'm like, hey, you have any old snippets? He's like, no, but I got a couple of fake Rolexes. Hilarious. No. Okay, so one of the perks of being a total weirdo who takes tons of screenshots of SERP features.
At least you know.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And this might, by the way, be the only perk, is having a very large collection of all sorts of SERP features. So I have a ton of feature snippets from the past 2-3 years.
Okay.
So now you know, right? You're satisfied. Okay. Do you want to know what I found?
Okay, what did you find, Morty?
Featured snippets are longer and shorter than they used to be.
Wow, that's super clear. Way to be decisive, Morty.
That's my middle name. Clearly decisive.
Clearly
decisive. Okay, let me explain. So, by the way, I only looked at list and paragraph featured snippets, meaning featured snippets that show just a couple of sentences, I'm calling that a paragraph featured snippet, and featured snippets that show a list, either a bulleted list or numbered list. No tables, because tables are really, really hard. I was comparing I was comparing a feature snippet from 2016 to 2019. I had to count up the characters to see which snippet is longer or shorter.
Really? Counting characters?
Yes, counting characters. I literally counted characters, okay? And doing a table was a real pain in the neck because I didn't do them. Let me explain what I did, okay? And I obviously had a tool to help me count up the characters. I wasn't like literally counting up like 1, 2, 3. I plugged it into a tool that said, here, 158 characters.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, just to be clear about that. So what I do is like this. Imagine I had a feature snippet in my collection of feature snippets. I will sell you my collection, by the way, for feature snippets. I'll trade you.
I'll pass.
Okay. I took a feature snippet from, I don't know, say 2017, and I looked at the same keyword and see if it brought up a feature snippet now. Now, if the format matched, if I got a feature snippet that was a list in 2017 for the keyword, and today, for the same keyword, I got a feature snippet that was also a list, I counted up the characters, and I saw, okay, is it longer, is it shorter, and by how many characters? Now, if the feature snippet back then was, let's say, a bulleted list, like, I don't know, I searched for, let's say, I'm making this up off the top of my head, how to make onion rings. Now, before you got a whole list of, like, steps you had to take to make onion rings. And now, let's just say that I don't get a list, I get a paragraph, just rambling on 2 or 3 sentences about how to make onion rings. I did not compare those two.
Oh.
Okay, because the list format, the bulleted list, the number list format, and the paragraph format inherently have a discrepancy between the number of characters Google shows.
Right.
The formats are so different that you're always going to have a discrepancy between the characters. How can I look and see, is it shorter or is it longer, if it's not the same exact format?
Right.
Okay, just to be clear. Okay. So you ready for the averages?
Bring it.
Yeah, okay. So by the way, so I'll explain, by the way, how I got to both shorter and longer feature snippets. Like, I realize that's not clear.
Okay.
I'm not stupid. Here we go. List feature snippets, right? Like you search for, let's say, how to make chocolate fudge, and you get a list, either a numerical list or a bulleted list telling you all about how to make fudge, okay? Those are longer than they used to be. Those
Really?
those are about 10% longer. Interesting. Okay, we'll get to why I think that is.
Okay.
Now, paragraph feature snippets, right? If you were to ask, let's say, Google, is it safe to eat the pizza if you left it out on the counter for 3 or 4 days? This is going back to my bachelor days.
TMI.
Right? And Google will give you a whole 2 or 3 sentences saying, no, you're a total idiot. Okay? Even considering the thought of eating 3-day-old pizza makes you a total idiot and in need of professional health. Professional help. Health help.
Both,
right? Okay. Those are paragraph feature snippets, okay? And those are shorter, not longer. They're about 14 characters shorter, which I looked up how many characters is a word, right? And the average word is, I think, like 3. I forgot the number, but reverse. I looked up how many words 14 characters would be, and that would be about 3 or 4 words. Okay, so 14 characters equals about 3 or 4 words on average. By the way, some instances, there was a massive discrepancy. Like, there's like significant, like 100 characters shorter. Okay? Now, by the way, I did not intend on this happening. So paragraph feature snippets are shorter than they used to be, which is what my theory was in my Search Engine Land article. I just didn't expect, when I wrote the article, I had no intention of ever doing this study for the next year or 2. I was very taken aback to find out that my theory would align if feature snippets are now shorter.
But least featured snippets got longer.
Okay, so it all makes sense. Okay, let me explain.
Okay.
So my theory is that Google is looking to turn the feature snippet into something a little bit less clickable. Okay, I'm not saying that Google has bad intentions. They don't want you to go to people's sites, and they hate. Google hates websites, and they're making the feature snippet less clickable because they hate your website, and they hate all websites. Google hates websites. I am not saying that. I am saying that Google is making it shorter because it's better for them. And it might be better for users from Google's perspective, which often is not what we think is better for users from our perspective. But okay, either way, they want the feature snippet to be more like a direct answer. Like I said, they want the user to look at the feature snippet, get an answer, and move on, and not necessarily go to the site for the reasons that I said before about authority and so forth. Okay, and that could be better for the user from a certain perspective. Okay, now in the case of paragraph feature snippets, less is more. Clearer is more. More succinct is more. More focused is more. More targeted answers will satisfy the user like a direct answer would. In other words, less characters in the paragraph feature snippet, okay, shows that Google is getting better at showing only what is highly relevant in the featured snippet, which again makes them less click-worthy. Okay? Now, think about it like this. When I looked at a feature snippet from 2016, a paragraph feature snippet, there's a lot more. It was a little bit more wordy. It was a little bit, okay, why does this sentence have to be here? I already know what I want to know from the previous sentence. So Google's getting better at filtering out that extra content, that fluff content that sometimes it threw into a feature snippet because it just took it took 2 or 3 sentences and threw them into the snippet, and that last sentence didn't really need to be there. So the answers are getting sharper. Okay, so if you want to offer a sharper, better, more efficient answer that comes off and gives you all you need to know, okay, then less is going to be more in general for a paragraph feature snippet. Okay, now imagine a list was shorter. Okay, imagine, let's say you did your search for how to make fudge, and instead of getting 8 steps, you only got 5 steps. Okay, would that make you more or less likely to click on the URL inside the snippet?
I mean, I guess the more I see from the receipt, the more likely I wouldn't click on the link. You know what I mean?
Right.
If I could see the entire recipe, there's no point of me clicking on the link. So I guess the less I see, the more chances I would click on the link.
Exactly, the opposite of a paragraph featured snippet. In other words, okay, for lists, more content, longer snippets mean less clicks. Okay, in other words, it's the same paradigm, it's the same construct, it's the same strategy. Just in one case, Google needs less content in order to make it more like a direct answer, i.e. paragraph feature snippets. And in the other case of Paul off this new paradigm, i.e. list feature snippets, is going to need to have more content, fuller, more complete, absolute lists where you don't need to click on a URL. And by the way, in many cases, it used to be when you have a list feature snippet, they would have 5 or 6 steps, 7 or 8 steps, and there would be a little link that says see more or more, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. In a lot of instances, that button is gone.
Really?
Meaning that the list, even though it might not be the full list, by the way, you might see 8 steps, there might be 16. Okay, but it doesn't come off to the user the way it used to be that, okay, there's 8 steps here, there's more. Right?
Right.
Okay, now you don't have the button. It looks like, all right, that's just it. That's what I got. Now, by the way, the number of steps stays the same. Okay, there's more, the steps are fuller.
I see.
Yeah, okay. So that in itself is also interesting. Anyway, okay. So in the case of list, they're longer because it makes sense for what Google wants to do with feature snippets. In the case of paragraph feature snippets, they're shorter because that's what makes sense for what Google wants to do with feature snippets. And that's that, okay? I'm done with this. But if you want to read the full study, the study is on the Rank Ranger blog. I'll make sure to link to it here in the paragraph in the blog post. In the blog post for this podcast. All right, moving on. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that was interesting. It is interesting, by the way.
Super interesting.
Very surprising that you see such a difference from just maybe a lot of the snippets that I use were for 2018. They're not all from 2016. I would say about a third to maybe half of them are from 2017, 2018.
That's crazy.
Two-thirds from 2017, 2018, and already we're seeing such a drop off. Anyway, okay. From competing with Google's SERP features, i.e. the feature snippet, to competing with other sites, here is the ever insightful, the diligently analytic Igal Stolpner. Cut 1. Welcome for yet another In Search SEO podcast interview session. Today, for your listening pleasure, we have an SMX speaker, a search marketing author, and he who just so happens to be the VP of Growth at Investing.com. Welcome, Igal Stolpner.
Hi, Morty. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, I found out a little dirty secret about you. You have a musical background, don't you?
Yes, that's true.
Can you elaborate?
How did you find
Oh,
out?
it's the web.
All right, so my dad is a cellist, my mom is a pianist, and when I was growing up, I was playing the violin, then the Jerusalem Music Academy,
Wow.
viola at some point, guitar at some point, and yeah, music was part of my life, I'd say pretty much until I was like 20-something, and I had some kind of like a funny move from music to the web because I started studying web development when I was a child. So basically, a long story short, my first thing that I did online was a website for musicians.
Wow.
So at some point around 2003 to 5, I'd say one of the largest communities in Israel for musicians was a website that I was operating. It was my website with a partner. And that's kind of like transitioned me to where I am today.
That's amazing. Very cool. By the way, I also need to point out to my audience that you, and tell me if I'm wrong, you were the first employee of Investing.com? Is that true?
Yes, that's true. Well, that's true, but to be really honest, there was one developer who started a couple of days before me.
Nah, it doesn't count.
But he left a few months later.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. So how long have you been there for?
Well, 11 and a half years, I'd say.
Wow, that's pretty good. Check that out.
It's very long for the online industry.
Yeah, for 100%. That is a rarity. Very, very cool. Okay, so let's get into some deep insights onto competitor analysis. Okay, so I have to start with this. You have a really interesting concept that I feel gets glossed over, and it's that you have multiple competitors from multiple perspectives. So theoretically speaking, you can have a competitor at the product or service level, right? You offer the same product, you offer the same service. You, of course, have competitors on the SERP, and you have your paid competitors. You have all sorts of competitors. The list is really, really endless, which is sort of the problem. How does a small business, a local business, handle so many competitors from so many vantage points?
Okay, so that's a good question. I got to tell you that a lot of answers in our industry, they begin with an "it depends" because it depends. And yeah, it always makes people laugh, but the truth is that it depends here as well. And I think that my answer for local businesses or relatively small businesses is not going to be very different from larger sites, because in the end of the day, even a medium-sized company is not going to hire 5 analysts to only focus on competitive intelligence. So basically, it's a question of focus. I mean, there's absolutely, just so much of everything, too many competitors, too many paid competitors, SEO competitors, too many content competitors, as you said, and it's all down to the Pareto principle. It has to be down to the 80-20 rule. So if I would be a small business or a medium site, really, it would be still the same. I'm saying you have to focus on the competitors that are responsible for most of the threats, most of the opportunities. And once you find them, once you figure out which ones you should be focusing on, this is where you begin the process. And from there, it's just a question of building a process that fits your own business.
So it's a matter of prioritizing. Prioritizing what you want to focus on, then prioritizing within that who the competitors are.
Exactly. And even then, for every single website that you'll be looking at, you're not going to care about everything. You are going to care about the things that make sense to you as a business.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So I want from quantity, I want to jump to quality for a second, because we spend a lot of time in the industry talking about competitor analysis from a quantitative point of view. And we have all sorts of ways for doing this, right? Who sells more than I do, who ranks higher than I do, and so forth, who's got more followers, whatever it is. And I have a problem with this, because it's really, really easy to get hung up on that, because it's easier to qualify it. It's easier to identify who your competitors are from a quantitative point of view, right? If I'm a social media, this guy has more followers than I do. If I'm selling products, they sell more products than I do. And that's easy from a certain perspective. But how do you go about looking at your competitors from a qualitative perspective, right? What's their overall threat level? And how do you do that at scale? Let me give you an example, right? A tool can tell you, for example, who has more traffic than you do, or who's ranking higher than you do. What it can't tell you is if that traffic that they're getting is quality traffic. Or for example, let's say someone ranks higher than you in the SERP. Great. They're number 1 or you're number 5, whatever it is, and they get all the traffic. But you have no idea really if they have a terrible bounce rate because they have a terrible UX. So how do you look at competitor analysis from a qualitative perspective?
Okay, so first of all, we have to go back for a second and discuss how SEO tools, the same tools that we always go back to, how they even identify competitors. So they don't really know everything you know as a business owner or even as a marketer from a company. They just see what happens within the SERPs.
Right.
So if these websites, they appear next to me again and again and again, they're more likely to be my competitors. And very often it works, or for the very least, very often it's a good starting point, right?
Right, most definitely.
But I'll tell you this, from there you have to look manually. And one thing that I keep seeing pretty often is that a lot of SEOs, or at least SEOs around me, they are studying websites only by tools, only by looking at the tools. Mm-hmm. But have they registered? Have they read content? Did they buy from this website? Did they even just, play with it? Like go through the site, see what's going on, and understand the true features or like the true value of these websites. That's something that I feel like a lot of marketers are still missing, because as you said, you may rank higher eventually, but is that your really business goal? And one thing that we know is that almost everything that we do in SEO, whether you are an in-house or an agency, is eventually a question of the business goals. In the end, there's a CEO who will give you an okay or will not give you an okay for this project, which means that this is where it starts, and you have to connect the things. You have to connect both the SEO competitors from a SERP's perspective to what makes sense for your business. And by the way, you've mentioned UX, and I think that UX is something that we are completely overlooking in search. But UX, in the end of the day, is not just whether this button is orange or green, or is it bigger or smaller. It's about the whole experience. And we kind of understand that in search because it's like part of who we are. Because one thing that we do as SEOs is we use the web a lot, but I feel like we need to look a little bit deeper. Maybe sit with our product folks, maybe understand the features better and see like, okay, is that truly an opportunity? Is this really even a threat? And how many times you're hearing about a website that's supposed to be your competitor, but the company, the CEO, the boards of directors, they don't even care about this website. So like you have to connect all these things together.
Yeah, it's a good point. I just recently spoke to Stony DeGator about this because we're talking about the nature of language as part of the UX, and that gets totally overlooked. You can look at a competitor's site; they might have a great UI, a great design, and whatever it is, but there so little goes into analyzing the language they use, the language you use, the language that targets users. There's so much that goes into analyzing a competitor from a qualitative point of view. Let me ask you this though, because when I think of quality metrics, that's a bad way to say that. When I think of analyzing a competitor from a qualitative point of view, brand recognition or brand power comes to mind. And I just want to ask you, how do you deal with that? How do you deal, like, you might be better on the SERP, you might be better with your paid search, you might be even better, whatever it is, but they just have better brand recognition. How do you combat that?
So brand recognition is something that I'm thinking a lot about because I find it really fascinating how important the branding point of view is, how important the branding factor is. And it's not really a direct, let's just call it ranking factor, but how strong the brand is or brand awareness is massive. Now, let me ask you this question. Do all SEOs have access to some kind of a search volume tool?
I would assume.
I would assume so too. Now, if you can do that, can you track competitors' branded searches?
I would assume.
So if you can do that, you can do two things. You can, A, look at how many searches there are for your competitors, one versus the other. And B, you can also do that with branded searches that are associated with specific topics. Let me give you an example. An example that I like is Best Buy, the store, laptops. Okay, people search for Best Buy laptops. And they search for Best Buy laptops because they know that Best Buy has a big variety of laptops that they can buy online. Now, that obviously helps Google understand the connection between laptops and Best Buy. They rank better for laptops, that's one thing, but also it can help us as marketers understand that among others, Best Buy is also known for their laptops because people buy them that way. So I feel like branded searches is a very useful metric to look at. It's also a fascinating one for us as companies to look and compare for ourselves over time, like what's your branded searches share over the whole, list of keywords that you have over time, and also compare it over time, like what happens this year versus the year before, or what's your KPI for the next one. So I feel like this is something that can help a lot of SEOs understand better the brand power, if I can call it that way, of their competitors.
Yeah, and there's so much that goes into that now. I mean, one is I do think that, I think John Mueller I think he's being interviewed by somebody from Distilled. He was talking about domain level metrics, and authority goes into that. We know for news results, authority is a big factor in there, and brand awareness would be part of that. And you can really go down the rabbit hole in terms of doing branded searches and all of the local features, like the knowledge panel or the local panel that show up for these things. And I don't want to do that. What I do want to do is, I know you have a concept that you call lean visibility or lean visibility test. And I know that relates to all of this, and I was wondering if you can share a little bit about that.
So the concept is very simple, and it goes back to what we spoke about previously about sitting with one of your product folks and understanding like your competitors better. So the concept is pretty simple. I've been hearing about usability tests for years. The idea is simple. What product and UX experts do before launching a new website or a new app is going through this process, which is called usability test. So what is it? First, they prepare for the test. They conduct it with a few people, not just one. And in the end, they analyze the results. Now, what we could do potentially is have the same thing for our competitors. Now, if you would do that for every single query, every single page, every single competitor, you would probably never finish. So that's not something you'll do. But a lean usability test should give you a big chunk or a big part of the answer that you're looking for. And the three steps that I have are pretty simple, to be honest. First of all, you just start with a search query. Okay, so put yourself in the user's shoes and try to figure out, like, okay, what do I do now? Ask questions. For example, how long does it take me to find the price filter? How long does it take me to find any filter, really? Does it require registering? Yes or no? Was this article really helpful or not really? And then you kind of try and answer to yourself, which competitor out of all the results that I have in the SERP provides the very best experience. Now, if you do that for your top 5, 10 competitors, you kind of begin to understand things that maybe you did not understand just by looking at the stats. You kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes. Why do users prefer this competitor over what I have? Now, this is very much of a product-related question, but I feel like today, more than ever before, it can actually help us understand things better.
I mean, yeah, you can do this for anything. I mean, you can do it if you're a blog competing with another blog, right? How easy is it to access the blog from the homepage of the website? How easy is it to view the articles? How appealing are the articles? What's their aesthetic look like? Yeah, I mean, I love that because you're looking qualitatively at the site, which I think so many people don't do, as you just mentioned. Which brings me to my next question for you: is that when you do something like this, when you do a lean visibility test, what you're really doing is seeing how all the competitors stack up together. It's all relative. There's no objective, sort of criteria. Maybe there is, but as a baseline. But you're really looking at, okay, what's the experience for the user on this site relative to that site, relative to that site? And do you think that users often, as SEOs or marketers, we kind of get lost in absolute values? For example, site speed would be a good example. Right, we all look at site speed. There's all these defined metrics of what's fast, what's not fast. And I think it was John Mueller. I could be wrong about this, and if I am, I apologize. But someone definitely said over at Google that it's really relative. They have a pool of sites they're going to pull out that are relevant to a certain query. And when they pull out these sites, there's all these different site speeds that are relevant to the certain pages. And the question is, not how fast are you objectively, but how fast is your page relative to the other relevant results? So for page speed, in practicality, it's all relative. If you're semi-fast and everybody else is really slow from that pool of sites that are relevant, well, then you're super fast, relatively speaking. How important is it, and what are your feelings, what are your thoughts on looking at competition analysis from a relative point of view and not from an absolute point of view?
Okay, so you touched upon something that I really like, because I'll tell you what, I actually realized that, not from other SEOs, I realized that from our developers. So for a very long time, I would come to our developers and tell them, guys, investing.com is not fast enough. And they would do these actions, and they would change the code, and they would improve the servers or move them from one country to another. And then we would go up from 15 seconds to 12. Great. And I realized that none of that really is important unless you're looking at your competitors, which means a website such as investing.com, again, that's just an example, which provides real-time data for lots of different stocks, will never have the same site speed as this blog or this website about a specific brand or a individual person's blog, because they don't have the same components to begin with. So basically, I think that absolutely everything in our industry is in comparison to who you compete with. And that means site speed, and that means bounce rate. Like, what's a good bounce rate, Morty? Do you have a good answer for that?
No, I have none.
No. Or what's a good number of links,
Huh. If you could find the magic answer to that, I think you'd be a millionaire.
Exactly. Or what's a good dwell time? What is it? It's all in comparison to who you compete with. Now, we need to remember that there's more than just one list of sites we compete with, because it could be the specific query. And the larger the website is, the more queries you have. And different queries bring different competitors. So your list of competitors only gets bigger and bigger. And then there's the business competitors, which is also something to look into. But in the end, if you're speaking to me about site speed, choose a list of sites you compete with and see that you're faster than they are. And site speed is just one example, but I feel like it really clears things up, because there are no true benchmarks.
Right.
There's no good bounce rate, there's no good site speed, there's no good number of links, or what's a good feature. It's all in comparison to your competitors.
Right. I mean, and that definitely gets lost on people, because it's just easy. It is easier to be objective about, or have an absolute value that you can sort of base yourself off of, instead of actually going out there and seeing how the competitive market, how the competitive landscape actually looks.
And I'll tell you what. Then what happens is not only that you get a better view from an SEO perspective, which also often explains things that we don't understand because we don't always understand why someone outranks you, but it also explains to you or helps you understand what's going on behind the scenes from the user point of view.
Right.
Which is, it's just part of the whole thing.
So I want to harp on this a little bit because it leads into another point, and I think it's a theme we've sort of been touching on here is that what's easier is what we naturally do, right? The path of least resistance, right? If we want to analyze competitors, we're going to do it quantitatively. If we're going to look at something like site speed, we're going to look at it from an absolute benchmark as opposed to relative to the competitive landscape. And I feel like particularly, maybe it's not particularly in our industry, I shouldn't say that, but I do see as a problem when analyzing the competition, when doing a competitive analysis, there's sort of like a monkey see, monkey do mentality, right? We'll take a look at our tools, our content gap tools, our site explorers, and we'll see what a site is doing, what we're doing or not doing relative to that site, and what we'll do is try to replicate whatever the competitive landscape is doing that we're not doing. If we're targeting X keywords and the competition is targeting Y keywords, we have to target Y keywords, and it's just easier that way, as opposed to saying, you know what, the competition is doing X, I'm doing Y, but there is option Z. I can be creative about this, and I can say, okay, they're doing this, I'm doing that, but there's room for something totally brand new here, something totally creative, something that nobody's doing. And if you had I hate to ask you to pick one, if you had to focus on one versus the other, would you focus on making sure that you're up to par with the competition and you're doing what they're doing and you're on the same page there or on the same level there? Or would you focus on trying to find a new competitive avenue that no one has targeted altogether yet?
So let's do this. I'll give you a full answer as much as I possibly can, and then I'll go and try to pick one because I don't think we can really pick one.
I know. I know it's one of those questions that you can't really answer. I get it.
I'll tell you what, and I'm not gonna say it depends, but it depends. And the thing is that I feel like good SEOs or good marketers, just as good successful online companies, they do both, and you cannot do just one. First, going for a trend is not just okay, it's perfectly fine, and there are trends which already began, and you are a little bit late, and you have to join the trend. Everyone's covering X, everyone's speaking about Y. Why shouldn't you do that either? I mean, you should be there as well. And if a page exists for a competitor and you don't, it's fine to edit. The only thing that I would want to do, and this is what I would ask from our product teams or content teams, is do it a little bit differently, do it a little bit better. Find out. I mean, you already have a good starting point because you know what they have. You already see the product and you can build a better product. But ignoring that entirely just because you want to be innovative, I feel like that's staying behind very often.
Interesting.
On the other hand, if you will only be looking at things that others are doing and you will not be creating anything new, you will not be taking the chance. But keep in mind, you've mentioned this option, which is option Z, according to what we said. The biggest problem with that is that very often you have no data to back it up with. And then at the end of the day, you go to your VP product or CEO and you tell them, hey guys, I want to develop this. Of course, it's a little bit easier when it's just a piece of content like an article, an individual blog post. But even then, you have to kind of back it up. Like, why do we do that? Why do we go ahead and produce that? But when you go and say, hey guys, for site X, this brings 20 to 25,000 sessions a day. We should definitely have that. Look at the search volume. Look at the competitors. That's a very great starting point, and it builds the case for you.
Right.
So, look, even if I'll go with option A, because I feel like very often for most websites or most of our listeners here, that would be the case. I feel like ignoring the second one would not make sense, and vice versa.
Yeah, I agree, and it's what's hard about it. It's almost like a left brain, right brain sort of thing. It's hard for one person to do both, and it's hard to act on a theory. It really is, and it's scary, and it's all those sort of things. And I do think, though, that sometimes because we're overly concerned about it, because we live in a metrics or a quantitative data world, that we sort of do ignore that innovation. And I'm not talking about trying to jump onto the moon and land on Mars, whatever it is. Something small, something one step further, something to try out. It's always good to experiment, that sort of thing.
I'll tell you this. When we're speaking about creating content, and in general in SEO, we speak a lot about creating content. I feel like this is something that a lot of SEOs and we as well are doing very often. And which means that you have an idea, you come up with an idea. It can be while driving or showering. You come up with this idea, you have a concept, you add some kind of a analysis point of view to it. For example, okay, which keywords maybe we should use, or maybe what kind of image we should have inside as a general topic. Everything else is new. Like when it comes to content creation, obviously the last thing we want to do is just copy others.
Yeah, and it's, ironically, I feel like content creation in the SEO industry is one of those areas where we fall back on, okay, this is what works, right? I'm going to write a post. I'm going to have to write a post on, the top ways to build links in 2019. And everyone's done it. It's all the same thing over and over again. I was just talking to somebody else a couple of weeks ago about that, there's really, and I'm putting myself out there, and I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but there really isn't one website, maybe I'm wrong, maybe disagree with me, where I can go to and get some really innovative SEO, articles, content, news on a daily basis. It's sort of the same thing over and over again. Once in a while, you'll find an interesting piece.
Well, I feel like if you're speaking about the whole, huge list of items we see in the world of SEO, and not specifically on this blog or another, then you're absolutely right. But if we'll speak outside of the SEO sphere, in most SEOs, they're not writing for SEO, they're writing for the topics they focus on.
Agreed.
I feel like writing about things that already exist, again, it makes sense. If it's a very popular evergreen topic you want to rank for, and it makes sense. But, or if you're a news publication, and everybody writes about this thing that just happened, you also want to be there, and you want to write for that, and you want to rank on Google News and top stories and just the regular search. That's perfectly fine. And bringing another angle or a piece of evidence or an image or statistics, that's obviously not only perfectly fine, but it's also something that will help you rank better. But I feel like with innovative articles, if we'll go back to the SEO field for a second, they often don't succeed through SEO. They often succeed because people share them and they become actually viral, and people speak about them because they have this innovative angle or a very interesting point of analysis. These articles usually are not written because they want to rank for SEO or anything else, with a high search volume.
No, it's for the social. I can speak to that. I do the same thing. I get it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I like talking about theory, and we're talking about theory now. So let's continue talking about theory a little bit. And I want to talk to you about how you conceptually look at competitors. How you look at them holistically. Like, for example, I'm an oddball, right? I spend most of my time analyzing Google. Like, we're on the verge of we're in the middle of a Google update as we're talking about, and I'm thinking about these things, analyzing these things. That's my perspective. I don't do SEO for a site. I have a weird sort of perspective on things, and that allows me to be a little bit, head in the clouds in a way, which I kind of like. Anyway. One of the things that I get to do is I get to collaborate with my competitors. I've collaborated numerous times with numerous competitors. I think it's a great thing, maybe not short term, but long term. And the idea of looking at the competition, sort of, cutthroat, it's us or them sort of thing, it just doesn't make sense to me. So let me ask you, am I crazy? And in the age of, the digital world, where there's so much interaction, there's so many layers and so many complexities to it, the sort of old school outlook of it's me or them, it's this cutthroat environment, they're the competition, and we've got to destroy them. Does that still work?
Well, first of all, of course it works to a point.
I mean, ultimately works. Short term, I agree with you. Short term, it works 100%.
And we're not gonna go back to what we said in the beginning about different businesses and different things that work with them, because on top of that, I think that even for the same business, for the same online business, it could be very different approaches with different competitors. So let's say you have a list of 10 competitors and you're like, okay, I'm going to be super competitive with these 3 because, we have a better potential there. And on the other hand, we are going to be a lot more holistic with others, or we are going to be, we're going to even work with them. Like, in the end of the day, there's some competitors that you simply cannot beat. And then the only thing you can do is join them. So what's join them? Join them means to work with them. Join them means to have some kind of a collaboration that can eventually help both sides. And again, I think that this is going back to business goals for a minute. Business goals means that in the end, you have the CEO who wants you to do X. He wants you to achieve something. It could be traffic. It could be leads. It could be a better experience. It could be improving a funnel or whatever it is, really. But it's always back to what matters to the business. So take 10 competitors, see what works with some of them, see what works with the other list. And no, I don't think you're crazy. It's just that
Then you don't know me.
Not yet, but I think that both ways can definitely work. And the secret, really, when it comes to competitive intelligence, is understand what's the best approach for every single site. And on the other hand, which sites I simply want to ignore because they are irrelevant for the business, because I can't compete with them. And if I can't compete with them and they're not on my radar, so where are they? What are we doing with them? Ignoring is one option, but even then, you want to list it. You want to officially say that. You want to kind of like decide what you want to do with such a competitor. That's my take.
Where do you think within that? Where do you think? Let me just ask you off the cuff. The idea that how you interact with your competitors or how you interact with the industry in general, whatever industry you're in, and part of that includes your competitors, is perceived by the consumer. So how does that factor in? Or it might be, interacting or collaborating with competitor A. It's not in my best interest. It's dollars and cents wise in the immediate, quantitative sense of it. It's not going to work out well for me. But to what extent or how do you factor in how that is perceived, how your interaction with them is perceived by the consumer?
So you need to take all things considered, really, because I can give you an example where I would see BizDev guys come to me and say, okay, we want to work with this website because the content department wants this type of content covered. We're not going to go into this right now. It's a new trend. We're going to take this content for someone else. They want canonical tags or they want link backs. Is that okay with you, Igal? And I'm like, let me think about that. Let me look at this thing. What does it even mean to the business? You can't just give an answer without understanding the whole thing. And very often, it's a no because it's bad practice for our SEO. And you have to take all things considered. Biz dev in general, in companies, in-house companies, they have a big part in it because they want their own things. And sales department, they want their own agenda to be covered and addressed. And we have our own one, which is very often different. So, SEO contradicts very often with sales and biz dev, I'd say, generally speaking. The approach is to find the balance that works in the best possible way for the company.
Yeah, and that's always the age-old question of how that actually comes about.
It is, but you have to look at the whole thing. And yes, sometimes, to be very honest, it's not you as the marketer who takes the decision. Right. Sometimes it will be the management, the higher management.
No, for sure. That's how it goes. Okay, since we're talking about things holistically a bit, how do you best measure your competitor overall? In other words, there's so many ways, so many metrics, so many vantage points that you can look at a competitor. You can look at their social prowess, right? You can look at how they're doing on the SERPs. You can look at their branding. You can look at their content is another way, right? Where our content gaps, how do we compete in terms of our content? Are they ahead of us? Are they not ahead of us? Whatever it is. There's so many ways, as we mentioned, where you can, or how you can look at a competitor. But how do you measure it up overall? Or is it not possible to create a holistic overall profile of a competitor?
It will never be fully holistic, Morty, but it can be pretty close to it. So I think that a very good starting point is pages. And when you're looking at top pages, you very quickly understand, okay, this is what they rank for. This is where they get traffic to. And I think it is important to differentiate between organic traffic and the rest of the traffic, because from a user point of view, it's less of a thing. It's more of something that we as SEOs are looking at. And then when you understand the whole list of pages and where this traffic is going to, you can go towards keywords. And with keywords, for us as SEOs, it's definitely potential of things we could rank for. But it can also tell you a lot about things that are new for them, things they now cover, or even trends. In fact, I feel like looking at competitors' keywords over time can help you even uncover trends they're covering. Now, it only works if you list this and you are looking at that for months. You can't just look at that once and understand everything. If you do it just once, you will understand what's their current focus or what currently works for them. And then I would add one more thing to it, because when we're speaking about pages, we are very often not seeing the whole thing. And one thing that can really help is subfolders. Not all SEO tools provide a subfolder view, but a few of them do. And if you do that, you are basically looking at the categories of the site and you understand what they actually dominate. Now, from there, I'll take you to another thing entirely, which we at investing.com, we do monthly. Every single month, we list the traffic changes, just the one number in sessions for our top competitors. And that allows us to basically see what's going on. So 1 or 2 months ago, we saw one of our top competitors decreasing by over 20%. And the trend is very similar to most websites, 6, 5, 4, 3% up or down. Now, there's this one site that is down 20%. Now, you don't know yet what it is, but you know that there is something to look into. And you let someone dive deeper until we figure it out. And we figure it out. And it's something that helps you really track everything that is going on. I feel like this is a big, big part of that. But definitely that, top pages, they have a very big part here because they often help you both understand like what is that they are truly known for, what they rank for, and also like what changes from 1 month to another.
Yeah, I mean, the trends are, I love trends. I'm a big trends person. I think that they're also not focused on enough. I mean, even for rank tracking, I did a piece recently about the idea that you're going to track your rank at one point versus another point is ridiculous. Like, who cares where you're ranking? You have no idea where the trend really is. You have no idea where your volatility really is. You have no idea what your stability is, and that really applies across the board. It applies to your traffic. It applies to everything. Trends are the way to go. Before we move on, I have to ask you. I have a little bit that we're going to do in a few seconds, but what have we not? It's only a short interview, really, because there's so much you can really talk about. But what have we not talked about? What are some tactics, some ideas to consider that we haven't really hit on yet that you sort of want to get off your chest before we move on?
I'll tell you what, if I have to choose one, I would probably go into crawling through competitors. Okay. I feel like in the SEO industry, we speak so much about crawling our own websites to like figuring out the problems, the 404s, the 301s we didn't know about, but we barely do that for competitors. Now, if you crawl competitors, there's so much that you can find. Let me think of a few examples. So one obvious thing would be to kind of like see the whole set of their titles, descriptions, URL structures. Because you will never just go and list your competitors' titles and see like what's the common ground for all of them. But especially for larger websites, usually sites use templates for titles, for descriptions. And when you crawl a website, you can just get a whole list in one place. Then I really like to think about the question, why do they even no index, no follow something? Because most crawlers, what they can do today is they can just give you a whole list of all the URLs that site acts, no indexes, no follows. And then you kind of like, okay, so they decided to no index this page, which we do. Let's ask ourselves why. Let's have a little brainstorm inside the team. And that can help us come up with a lot of interesting insights. Well, web crawl depth is a big thing as well. Helps you kind of understand like how far their pages are from the homepage or any relevant subfolder. And let me think what else. I think that like the domains they are linking to is massive, can help you understand like easily. I mean, you will never be able to find all the domains they're linking to, but a crawler can easily give you a whole list of all the domains they link to, both the number and specifically the sites. So crawling competitors is not something I do like on a daily basis, but it's something we do from time to time, especially in periods when we learn or go through changes. And I feel like it can really be helpful for SEOs.
I love it. I love that idea. By the way, looking at a site's titles and looking at how they change over time, for example, and I have to plug this, Rank Ranger does offer a tool called the SEO Monitor where you can see how or what title changes a competitor has made over the course of the last 30 days. You can see each time how that impacted rank and what they're doing, what their strategy is. But looking at what the competitor is doing, whether they're not using this tool or another tool, looking at what they're doing in their titles, looking at what they're doing in the meta description, look how they're using even their URL structure. It's tremendous insight into how they're thinking.
This is very interesting because if you are then able to find correlation between this and ranking changes, it can be very big for you. It can give you a lot of ideas. And like how often people say in SEO that titles are not what they used to be from like a rankings point of view. Of course they're not, but they still matter.
Sure.
And And larger websites that have hundreds of thousands of URLs, a little change in their template can make a change. So optimizing these is like part of the day-to-day for enterprise SEO for sure.
No, I've seen huge one. For example, I don't remember what the keyword was or the type of keyword that it was, but I saw when you added the year in, or if you added in, it's 2019, so you added 20, whatever, X, Y, and Z, 2019, all of a sudden your ranking just shot up.
or even something that we've noticed, just remember a few months ago, that one of our competitors, they made all of their titles shorter. I don't know what it was exactly, but let's say something like by 20% of its length. And over the sudden, they improved not all rankings, obviously, but some specific rankings that we noticed. And it's something that you definitely want your SEO team to be on top of and notice.
And that's it's a good point. It's not across the board. You can't add 2019 onto whatever niche industry you're in or whatever type of site you have, and that's going to work. It all depends upon what type of site you are, what the keywords are, what the niche is, all that sort of stuff. There's no across the board rule for any of these things, which is sort of the point.
Everything is it depends these days more.
That's right. I would put it this way: everything is at the page level. I don't think there are niches the way there used to be. Certainly, general factors are not existent to a certain extent. Everything exists at the page level.
Totally agree.
Okay, so with that, I have this little game that we do for my regular listeners. You know what it's called: optimize it or disavow it. It's where I give you either two really good options or two terrible options. You're stuck having to choose either one good option over another good option or one really bad option over another really bad option. So this is the Igal Stolpner version of optimize it or disavow it. So I'm going to ask you, okay, so since we're talking about competitors, right, if you could identify a competitor by looking at their ranking, right, this competitor ranks above me for X, Y, and Z keywords, all these keywords I'm being outranked by this competitor, or you can look at who has a better or over, social media presence, who has more followers, who's on more platforms. If you can gauge it by rank or your competitor by social media, which profile do you look at? One over the other one. There's no depends here, I guess.
So if there are no it depends, I would go with the first one, probably without a doubt. I have very mixed feelings about social media these days. I love social media on the one hand, but I feel like for my brand and for a lot of large brands, the things that are happening in around social media are not great anymore. Mm-hmm. And a lot of frustration here as well, but we're not going to go there. Basically, long story short.
I feel your pain, to quote Bill Clinton.
Long story short, I feel like without a doubt, so much more potential from ranking, improving ranking from 4 to 3 than from seeing if post X works a little bit better on Facebook for your competitor.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And yes, I definitely feel that social media is not what it used to be. It's very, very difficult, and it's so much fun, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yes, lots of fun. All right. Thank you, Igal. I really do appreciate it. This was great. And we should do it again sometime.
Yes, I had a lot of fun. Thank you, Morty.
Have a
good one.
You too. And we are back to your regularly scheduled In Search SEO podcast. His answers, by the way, are so thorough. Like really, really, really thought out. Seriously substantial. I was very, very impressive. Mm-hmm. Really solid answers each time. Okay, so now that we heard the interview, I am still on the fence with how cutthroat you have to be versus how collaborative you should be with your competitors. Obviously, there are competitors, by the way, you should not partner with for a variety of reasons. Okay, they're jerks. That's always a good reason. They themselves are hyper cutthroat. Also a good reason not to really, align yourself with them. They're going to stab you in the back.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. A little too aggressive there?
Too aggressive.
Yeah, okay, sorry. They'll stab you in the back. Ha ha ha. Okay, but excluding that, I'm still curious what people think. Okay, should you be collaborative? Should you not be collaborative with the competition in this digital day and age? In other words, yeah, Good question, I think. I'm curious. Anyway, that does mean that it's time for Rank Rangers SEO Community Question of the Week, which means it's time for Sapir to tell you what that question is.
Mm-hmm. Well, so yeah, basically, generally speaking, do you think you should collaborate with your competitors?
Or not?
Or not?
Or not.
Mm-hmm.
All things being equal, of course. Okay, obviously you're going to tell me, well, in this case, I did it in that case. All things being equal as a general rule, I'm curious to know, do you think being collaborative with your competitors makes sense or doesn't make sense? I mean, I will be honest with you. We've had some of our competitors here, right? We've done blog posts with them. I've done expert roundups, people on the podcast, because I do feel that being collaborative and is a better way. Like, look, there's room, and generally speaking, there's enough room for people. If you collaborate and if you're with other people and you show that you're really interested, because the truth is, to me, as a content creator, and this is why I'm asking the question, because as a content creator, for me, it's more worthwhile to focus in and make better, unique content. If that means bringing somebody in who may be a competitor of mine, who may have a really unique perspective on this, then it's worth it. But maybe not, because I'm just a content guy, so what do I know? I'm also a marketing person, so I do know. Anyway, I'm selling myself short. Moving right along, because I do not have a better transition than that. You know, a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous, to quote the Big Lebowski, over the past week or so in the SEO. You look at me like the Big Lebowski. You know the Big Lebowski, right?
Of course I do.
You do not. You have not seen the Big Lebowski.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
My God.
What?
Oh my God. I do not abide to that. The dude does not abide to that. That is a classic. Oh, you're
Old classic, right?
Oh my God! Don't call that. You're moving right along. There were a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have yous in the SEO news recently.
Oh wow!
And despite Sapir not knowing that reference, we're going to ask her to please take it away with the news.
Okay, so first, Google proclaimed that it is working to make the robots exclusion protocol an official web standard.
Ooh, okay.
Then Google announced you will not be able to use robots.txt to tell the search engine not to crawl a page. Google did list some alternatives, such as using a 404 status code or the Search Console remove URL tool.
Right. And this goes into effect September 1st, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Right. So it didn't happen yet. Like, don't freak out. But you should freak out soon if you're using robots.txt to tell Google not to crawl a page. You might want to change that. That's not going to work out well for you as of September 1st.
Okay, let's move on. Google says it is going to be showing more app ads in iOS.
Yay.
Yay!
I guess. Or no. Okay. Depends on your perspective. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Say hello to place topics in the local panel. Google is now looking at reviews, pulling out themes and highlights, and placing tags in the local panel so that a user can get a quick look at what a business is about.
Oh boy. Okay.
Ooh.
Okay. So imagine like this. Imagine you're a restaurant. You're a seafood restaurant. Okay.
I hate seafood.
Yeah, I'm not a big seafood person either.
Okay.
Right, okay. But let's say you're a seafood restaurant. Okay. And users leave all sorts of reviews all about the unique character of your restaurant, maybe some of the things you offer in your restaurant, some things that make it good, some things that make it bad. And Google's going to be looking through the reviews. It started already doing this and pulling out some highlights from the reviews, like great atmosphere or excellent lobster, whatever it may be, and putting these little bubbles or tags at some point near the review section in the local panel, so that users can look and see, okay, this place is good at this and offers this. It's sort of like a description in tag form. It's really awkward. I don't know. It looks awkward. I think the format of it. Take a look at it. We'll link to an article where you can find it. I think it looks awkward. I don't know. Well, let's say your business, like, I don't know. Let's say you're acupuncture. So you're gonna have things like painful, needles, hurt. This business, this looks great. Let me sign up for this. Also, let's just say, okay, Google does a bad job at pulling out the descriptions. Like, what's going to show up there may not align to what you do at all, or may not be reflective of what you do at all. I do understand having the reviews being used, what people write, actual customers being used as a way sort of to describe the business. But I would like a little bit of maybe let the owner themselves offer in 2 or 3 suggestions. You can have them in a different color, different color tag, right? So the ones now have a white background. Maybe put them in a blue background if it's from the owner themselves. But something from the owner to balance it off, I think, would be a nice little doohickey to have in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, lastly, Google seems to have indicated that no other Search Console reports will be pulled from the new construct.
Right. So, okay, so you have your new Search Console. Google has redacted, pulled into legacy a bunch of old, or now they are old, Search Console reports. Google says, hey, we're done with that. Well, John Mueller indicated they may be done with that. It wasn't like an official statement, but he seemed to say, if it's there now, we're probably leaving it alone. So that's probably some good news for you, some stability. You don't have to worry what's going to be taken away from you next. Okay. Alrighty. So here it is. We've reached the pinnacle of the show.
Oh, yay.
Yes, y'all ready for this? Okay. That's terrible. As our time here passes and we're close to ending the show, we are at the height of search engine optimization talk right now with the fun SEO send-off question. Okay, so this week, since it was recently America's birthday, also known as the 4th of July, also known as Independence Day, and if you're not from America, you should know that hot dogs are a major part of 4th of July culture. They actually have a contest where people compete to see how many hot dogs they can shove down their throat.
That's disgusting.
It is disgusting. First, they have to dip the hot dog in a bun and dip it in water.
Stop, Marty.
Because you gotta
Stop.
get down the gullet. Okay, so these guys eat like 70-something hot dogs. I can eat maybe 4. And where do you put 70 hot dogs?
I don't want to know.
And they're not there's skinny guy. It's disgusting. At the same time, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. 70 hot
you're
dogs.
Weird.
I'm not weird. People love that. There are bets in Vegas about who's going to win the contest. So I'm weird? That's weird. You don't bet on this kind of thing. All right. With that, okay, with 4th of July just passing and with people eating 70 hot dogs, what does Google put on its hot dog?
Please, Morty. Google won't eat a hot dog.
They wouldn't eat a hot dog?
Google is not a commoner. Google would get a prestige catering service or something and would go for a rib steak. Not a hot dog. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Us peasants eat hot dogs.
I'm saying it
let me just go back to steerage
from
to get myself a hot
Google's
dog.
point of view. Okay.
Oh, I see. You're saying Google's an elitist.
And I don't know, Baidu would eat hot dog.
Fine. Oh, correct. Because they have no class over at Microsoft. Microsoft.
I didn't say that.
You just said it because only people in steerage eat hot dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I love hot dogs. I don't know what's in them, but they taste delicious.
Okay.
I want to eat 70 of them right now.
Dip it in the
Dip it in the water. Okay, that's not disgusting at all. It's like eating soggy cereal with meat in it. All right. So if I were to say Google were to eat a hot dog, and I think Google does eat hot dogs because Google is just like us.
No.
Just like us.
No.
I would say Google loves condiments. All of them. Mustard, sauerkraut, ketchup, pickles, relish, onions, cheese, whatever. Because it's one condiment for every SERP feature out there.
Oh, I see what you did there.
But yeah, that was, again, a little bit lame.
Yeah.
A little bit lame.
As usual.
Because, these answers are not as easy to come up with as you may think. In fact, the hardest part of this podcast is this segment. Which is sad.
It is.
All right. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the InSearch SEO podcast. Do not forget to tune in each and every Tuesday. Tune in next Tuesday for another episode of the InSearch SEO podcast. And it's in search because we're all in search of something. Thank you.
Thank you.